Today's episode is brought to you by MuscleEgg. MuscleEgg is 100% liquid egg whites that are uniquely flavored to satisfy your sweet tooth. I've been using MuscleEgg for years now, and honestly, it's the only way I can eat eggs. I'm a very picky eater, I know. Anyway, try the MuscleEgg for yourself. The link is in description below. Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am here today with my coach, Adam Bonilla from Team Elite Physique. And what we're gonna do today is something super fun. We're gonna go through all my looks of the 2021 season so far and kind of dissect what I did good, what I didn't do good, I can improve, and any learning lessons along the way.
It's going to be a fun one. I'm excited for it. Hopefully you guys learn a thing or two and you line up all your pictures from your progress pictures and you can kind of do the same thing after it.
So stay tuned. Okay, so the first show of the year was Clash, and kind of a rough start to the year, you could say.
Yeah.
Kind of a rough start. But physique-wise, let's go over the physique first and then we'll go over feedback and everything else.
Yeah.
Physique-wise, I would say that this was probably my bubbliest look of the year.
Yeah, you actually really popped in this one. Yeah, looking at your pictures here, it's crazy to think about because this is a winning physique for sure. You know, this is not you're not flat here. You're super full, your tie-ins are there, your hamstrings are round, there's no separation. I mean, it's exactly what they want. This is a good physique.
Yeah, totally. And I would even say too, this was the prep that was kind of hard for me. Out of all the preps this year, this was hard because I'll be honest, I kind of rushed into the show. Or I don't want to say rushed, but I definitely wasn't as prepared as I'd like to coming in. So that meant the last few weeks I really had to push it. So I don't usually have like hard peak weeks or preps, but this was like the one exception. Luckily I was able to maintain myself after this one, but just getting into the groove of things, getting into that first show groove was kind of difficult for me at first.
But I think, you know, as it came down to the points, it came down to basically your posing is what happened that day.
The feedback was really, really needed to work on the posing for sure. And I've told the story a few times, I think, on my channel, but I'll just like summarize it here real quick. I tried to basically create a new routine, right? Totally different from what I have been doing. And maybe I wasn't as confident with it yet because when I got on stage, I experienced something for the first time ever. And I just kind of blanked once I got on stage. It was the weirdest thing, like almost like I forgot everything. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is what people with stage fright probably do. They just blank. It was the weirdest thing, but definitely a learning lesson that, whoa, I need to practice more on the posing for sure. And maybe another lesson within there would be to not try to, I guess, switch so many things up at once and maybe do it more gradually. So each show I've been fixing little things here and there, but nothing like totally drastically changes. More specifically with the posing, they said that I needed to stand up more in the back pose, which I didn't feel like I was bending over too much. They said for me to stand up straight. And actually they told me to literally just, after the show, just stand up straight. So you'll see in the next show that I did that. And in the front pose, they told me to straighten out my leg a little bit more because I used to kind of, I don't want to say bend it, but like have a soft knee. And for me, since I already kind of have this hamstring and the glute, it might have been like a little bit too overpowering in a way. Whereas if I would have just stood up more straight, it probably would have evened out my bottom to the top a little better.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too. And I think that was good feedback. And the cool thing about this is, after this show, was it after this show you went and you saw Tyler too?
Yes, I got judges' feedback right like on site. So that was so helpful. And it was like one of those things that like I was so disappointed in myself that I messed up so badly, but probably needed that in the long run because I really got to practicing my posing and stuff after the show.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I will say, and I'm not gonna like give you the excuse of it because I know you don't like that, but you also stumbled on the stage too because of the cracks on the stage where the planks on the stage.
I overthought it basically, so I was like trying to avoid the cracks. So I was like taking these like huge steps in my individual presentation, and it was just not a good one. I just had the nerves so bad on that, and I just wasn't confident with my routine, and that's what happens.
It just shows you how important the posing routine is.
Exactly.
Got to practice.
And be comfortable with it before you try anything different, you know?
Yeah. All right, now looking at
the Wasatch Show.
The Wasatch Show. I like this look a lot on your physique.
Yes, this was my redemption show.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even planning on doing the Wasatch, but since I did so poorly with my presentation, I had this itch that I needed to scratch. I needed to fix this problem. I was like, I'll be darned if I don't get to the first show to correct my errors. And that is what I did. I listened to the judges' feedback. I stood up very straight, and I also kept my knee very straight in the front pose. So as you'll see, there are slight differences, and you can see how even just straightening out the leg kind of evens out my bottom to the top a little bit better, right? Whereas when I had that slight bend to my knee, it made my hamstrings and glutes pop out like too much, I want to say. So it was less bubbly at the Wasatch, but I guess more symmetrical.
Yeah, and you can see the difference. The hamstring just becomes a little bit stronger in that slight bend.
Yeah.
A little bit, and then it's mainly the glute though. It's
Yeah.
mainly this crazy glute you got there. And I think that you kind of pushing out here, definitely with that knee being bent, it kind of makes it more of an angle.
Yes.
It makes this kind of appear more like you're pushing because your knee's farther this way, just slightly, and that just overpowers the upper body a little bit. So
True.
I definitely would see that and agree with that.
And they also told me to be a little more forward facing. This particular judge told me to be a little more forward facing. So in the Wasatch, you'll also see that I'm a little more forward facing rather than profile. And I think that kind of hides I don't want to say hides, but it kind of
Just balances
my glutes out a little bit to match my upper body.
Yeah, and what she's saying by there is she's turning her waistline, instead of being super profile, which would be, full on that way, with her waistline being as small as it can be, she's actually turned out a couple inches this way, which is going to help the balance of this part. And if you look at it, balance-wise, this part to this part ratio is actually pretty close. Mm-hmm. So the balance from upper to lower body is less drastic when you get to the top versus being fully profile. So it makes a big difference in these little tweaks. And we're still playing with that. We're still going back and forth with this, sometimes going smaller, sometimes going bigger, just depending on the situation, really.
So yeah, just like I mentioned, I did take all the judges' feedback, and it worked because this show I won and I fixed my errors. So I was like, that was a relief. Fix what I needed to fix.
Your hamstring and glute tie-in here look pretty good, but I do think you standing so upright, it does shrink your glutes from the back a little bit.
I mean, they told me to stand straight up, so I took that very literally.
Yeah.
When it doesn't show here on the screen, and you'll see that I'm definitely the most upright one out of the lineup for sure, but I'm just doing what they told me, so it worked. And sometimes it's like you got to trust their opinion.
Yeah, so. It's definitely tough to like know that there's more in there, and then when you're on stage and someone else is like pushing harder, and I'm sitting in the audience and I'm like seeing this girl look like she's got more detail and more glutes, but I know that you do, but I'm like, well, she's told not to. So it's hard to like just sit there but if the W comes out of it, then it's it's worth it. So it's definitely a hard thing to do. Totally. But the good thing is after this show, we got to talk to Tyler, got to have him look at you, like he's like, so what's and Tyler was really cool. He's like, so what's the deal with the back pose? Like, what are you struggling with? And we're like, hey, this is what we've been told. This is what we want to do. This is what kind of where we're trying to get to. And he was like, this is perfect right here. And so he kind of said, push a little bit more than this, which was nice. And so then that was really helpful to find the perfect, like kind of where he likes it and where he recommended it. So
totally. So next is the Pittsburgh. Actually, this is my favorite look of the entire year. My favorite. I think I looked the best here. And I actually won the show with a perfect score, which was amazing, especially a big show like that, prestigious show to get a perfect score. Not only my physique, but my makeup and hair was so on point this show. Yeah. I was having a good makeup day that day. Yeah. So I'm really happy with this particular look. And my shoulders, for some reason, were really popping this show. And I didn't even pump up that much, but it was warmer backstage, so that could have been a reason too. But my shoulders were, I guess, ideal for a bikini on this particular day. I would say this is my best look.
Yeah, there's really not much there to like pick at, This is a really strong look. You look full, you look sharp.
Mm-hmm. And then one thing I do remember for that show that I personally know I could have done better is I was looking back at your YouTube video where you had the insert of the Pittsburgh Pro. You were live streaming it.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't realize how fast I was going through my routine. For some reason, I was like moving too fast. Like I should have just calmed down a little bit, took it a little slower. But other than that, I would say that was my thing I was, I guess, lacking in is like just slowing it down a little bit. But physique-wise and hair and makeup was my favorite for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a really good look. There's really not much there, you know?
Yep.
I mean, this is a look that we should be shooting for the Olympia type of thing. Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So on to the next show, which was in California.
It was at this really nice resort. It was called the California Night of Champions, put on by Tamer and Tarek, and it was a muscle contest show. So this show was nice because it was convenient. It was close to us. We just flew in on a Friday. And, you know, when shows are close and it's a short flight, we don't have to arrive there super, super early, which was nice. So it was very convenient, very close. And what I liked about this show is, unlike the past 3 shows, it was a little more like a low-key show, if that makes sense. Like a little more, it was smaller, which doesn't necessarily mean it's easier by any means. But what I mean is a little more low-key, like it wasn't as hyped up, whereas the previous 3 shows definitely were, especially Pittsburgh. So it was nice to be like, okay, all right. I can maybe be more relaxed with this one, right? And relaxed I was. I feel like each show I'm relaxing a little more with my routine and posing. So yeah, what do you think physique-wise? I think I was still a little conservative with my pushing of the glutes. I definitely could have pushed more, I think, in the back pose for this. But I feel like my front pose was very good.
Yeah, I think that you're pretty much, this is another good look of you. You're not, you know, here's where you're starting to see a tiny bit in the arms where they could have been a little bit fuller.
Out. This was my second show in a row. New York would have been
third.
And
I think that's
so this is a week-to-week situation.
This is where you start seeing the effects of not being able to get those compounded workouts. Just a hair.
Yeah.
Like it's just, if you look at it really closely, you can see that just the detail isn't as there as much, like mainly in the arms. It's like the detail isn't there. When you look for like the arms, you want to see just that you have a slight separation line, a slight more hardness to it, a slight more hardness to your shoulders too. That's not there. And in this arm, you know, and if you look back, if you look at this picture and then you look back at the Pittsburgh show, you see that little detail and separation, like you see the vein here.
And more pop in general, more bubble.
This insertion is nice and deep here. You know, you see the tricep little bubble there you got there. Over here, you're seeing that little bit of tone, like separation arm right here in between those two. Just a little bit, like that little divot here.
Yeah.
You know, and you start seeing that just fade just a little bit as you start getting into shows. You could see just a little bit less each time, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, definitely, it's hard to do, you know, show to show because you're doing less workouts per week. And you could even see on just a tiny bit more, just a hair more softness to the core, you know, and then in the I would say in the glutes too. When you go here, you could see just right in this last little, just a tiny bit. So you could see show to show, it's definitely better for you to peak like your first show. So for like the Olympia, we don't want to do 3 shows in a row and then do the Olympia, you know. So this is pretty flawless, to be honest. This look is pretty.
My favorite look. Yeah. I was so proud of my makeup that day. I was so proud of it. I was like,
pretty damn good. Yeah, it's pretty.
But yeah, that was my favorite for sure. And yeah, you'll see as we kind of go through these photos as well. Like some of these shows are like week to week. Some of them are coming off of a few week break, and then you'll see like my 3rd show in a row, which would be the next one, New York, where I flattened out the most. For the New York show. Yeah,
and so this is the 3rd week in a row.
This is New York.
The New York Pro. And so you could see, it progressively gets a little bit less. It's not a lot. And that's the problem, is it's so little each time that it's like hard to really see when you're like going through the prep. And then after and you see the pictures, you're like, oh yeah, you could see it, you know? So just a tiny bit of general softness, more softness to the core again, and then a tiny bit more general softness to the arms again. And I think the place you played the biggest price was what we talked about was like the glutes, right?
Yeah. I remember, like, right before the show, I was freaking out because my glutes lost like an inch, which don't really seem like a lot to maybe somebody else, but you can really see it if you look at my photos, like, from week to week to week, how my glutes kind of shrank, and I guess my overall body shrank too. I remember watching, like, a live stream replay with commentary on the New York, and the girls were like, oh my gosh, she got really small between these shows. She looks a lot smaller than usual. So I think sometimes the photos can be deceiving, but I was very tiny for this show, very tiny. I think, was this the show that I was like freaking out that I was way too like small and lean and just, I know I was like that with my glutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened to my glutes?
Yeah, it was the glutes was the main thing, like where you're getting a little bit, you're getting a little bit smaller. Like we needed, and the problem is you can't, when you go from show to show, you can't like have these big reloads, you know, because then you're gonna hold water and it's unpredictable, and then you can't work it. You're not working out. that's the thing is people don't get when you're doing 3 shows in a row, you're only working out 9 times in 21 days.
Oh, right. Yeah, like 3 days a week. Just because of travel, like, the travel day, which would be Thursday or Friday, check-ins, the athlete meeting or whatever, the show itself, I'm not working out on show day.
Yeah.
And then traveling back. And then, even when you return home, you don't have the same kind of energy. You're not as fresh physically. So even the 3 workouts I was having during those weeks weren't like the best. It wasn't like, wow, this was an epic workout.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm just getting by kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just because the energy levels.
And you're not working out hard during peak week anyway, because you want to reduce the inflammation. So it adds up pretty quick. So for us, we found that 3 in a row is probably it's where you really
you're
pay
risking
for
it more and more. It's like I like to describe it as a thread. Each show I do week to week to week, if the thread gets thinner before it like snaps, right? Before I start to look worse.
Yeah.
So I might be able to pull off 1 or 2 in a row or whatever. 3 might be risking it, but I always go by like how I look, So I think that's just something to keep in mind.
And we're learning it too as you're doing more and more too. It's like we just have to find ways to keep you fuller in between them, which is gonna be, I'm sure there's an answer to it, but we're gonna get it better as it goes on. But right now we don't have the full answer yet.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and just like you mentioned, like in a perfect world, it'd be like, we'll just eat a whole bunch of carbs after the show.
Yeah.
It's unpredictable, and for me personally, I don't want to risk like filling out completely, risking my conditioning, because if I spill over, or if I start to put on a little body fat, to me is not worth being my maximum amount of fullness. I'd rather be more conditioned than risk get fuller. And it's hard to do when it's unpredictable where your carbs are fluctuating like that. And it's hard to load up and pump them into your muscles in that short period of time. Especially
with the judges the way they want you to. The judges want you lean and sharp.
Yes.
They're not usually complaining about your fullness. So, and then this here just shows you.
Yes, so after I freaked out that my glutes were disappearing, as you can see, this is a little progression of taking a few weeks off and pumping those carbs back into the glutes, getting some heavy, good workouts with Coach Sam here at Team Elite Physique. And I remember being so proud of that photo on the right. I'm like, yes, look what I did in the span of 2 weeks. Woo,
Yeah, it's just eating a little bit and working out hard again and having the energy to work out hard again too, which is another thing,
Yeah.
So this just shows you, this is a good thing to show people too, is when they do a lot of cardio and then they do a show and then they bring their body down too much because they did way too much cardio that they think they lost all their muscle.
Yeah.
You didn't. It comes back pretty quickly.
Exactly.
It comes back pretty quick. So
you just got to treat those muscles right.
Yep.
Pump those carbs in there, So I was super happy about the one on the right. I just like seeing progress. It really excites me. So I was like, yes, I got my glutes back. We're back in business.
That's a pretty significant.
Yeah, even in the upper body. I know my hair is kind of covering it on the left, but even the upper body you can tell too.
Yeah, you could totally see.
And that's without a tan, so.
That's true too. And then
the mile high.
Which I think we knocked it out of the park pretty good at the mile high. I think that
I could have been a little poppier, I think.
The core could have been a hair tighter. You could see a little bit more detail, but this one is pretty solid. You're in that margin of perfection, you're within that range. You're at the softer end of the range, but you're in that range. And I think that and it's that perfect range is where the judges are like, and they're confused about feedback. That's when I know we nailed it, is because they're confused and they're like, she could have been maybe a little bit tighter, but no, don't get her too tight. Like they give you this they kind of don't want to tell you that. And it's you find that you're usually in that perfect spot when they tell you that. And that's actually funny, is that Sandy's the one that told me that trick. She's like, when I say that she wants to be too tight, but I'm not sure, and I'm afraid to tell you that because you might get her, push her way past, that means you're probably right where you want to be. And I think that's what I would tell you, is to get her just a little bit tighter, but then I don't want to tell you that. It's type of thing. And I was like, okay, so I think that sounds like we nailed it. She's like, yeah, usually that's what it means. And so kind of cool. So when the judges are having a hard time telling you about conditioning, if they're not, they're like, well, I don't know. Yeah. We probably knocked it out of the park. So
right. And I remember on this feedback, they told me, a posing tip that I can do is maybe see, they were kind of like the opposite of the previous judges, and they said, I want you to be a little more profile, so your waist shows your waistline a little bit better. So every judge is going to have a slightly different opinion, and you just got to kind of accumulate all of them and just kind of make your best decision with it. But they told me to be a little more profile on my forward pose. Yeah. So I was like, I could see that. I could definitely be. I think I personally look better more profile sometimes, and I think too, another reason why I'm able to pull off a little more profile now is because I'm a little more balanced at this point. Whereas the first show I was kind of bottom heavy, but now I'm starting to even out a little bit here at this point. So I think that I could benefit from more of a profile pose.
And that was another thing the feedback said from the judge was like, if someone's going really profile on you, maybe you want to switch it up, be a little bit more profile to match. So it's good to know, you know, based on also who's in that first call out with you, how you might want to be making some slight adjustments to your posing.
Totally, yep. And also for this show, I don't know if you guys noticed, I got a new suit. It's slightly different color, and the cups are, it's like a molded cup, and it fits like a lot better for me. So Angel's Competition Bikinis, hey, what's up? New suit. I love the way it fits. It fits a lot better.
And I like that red a lot.
Yeah, it's more of a cherry.
I like
bright
that red better.
Okay, so the most recent competition was the Clash of the Titans in Georgia. So this is a show that I have won, and I did get a little bit of feedback. They actually said that I could have been a little leaner here, and that's, you know, every judge is gonna have a different opinion. So this was the Clash of the Titans, and I like this look for me. I feel like, you know, personally, I feel like I was pretty bubbly in the show. This was another week-to-week show, so I guess given the circumstances that it was like the second week in a row, I maintained bubble pretty well, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about conditioning being an issue, you generally want to look at like the people next to you. Were they that much more conditioned than you? Were the little details there? And when you start seeing like this line come through, that tendon come through here, like on your side, you're pretty lean. You know, I think that if you were a tiny bit fuller, you would have looked leaner. And that could have been the solution there.
Yeah.
But I don't think losing body fat really would have been the answer here, because that when you're having this tendon show through here and all the detail here, sometimes you could be a little softer because you could be fuller, and then when you have the carbs, you tighten up a little bit. So I think that could have been just a little bit more in the carb department. Like, you'd have been more crispy if you were fuller, but not necessarily body fat wise. Yeah. And that's
overall, I think I looked pretty good. I think I can start to see like my arms diminish again after. It's like, see how my arms, like the bicep tricep, are starting to like kind of fizzle away. I think I kept my shoulders pretty good with that bubble, but I think my bis and tris are kind of disappearing at this point.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's, you know, something I just got to keep in mind is like, you know, every time I do a show to show, it's not going to be easy, but to, I guess, push through and see if I do plan on a really big show like the Olympia, like we mentioned, we're not going to do a show the week before, just because I'll look a little fresher if it's like my first show in a row. Yeah. But after Olympia, let me tell you, I'm gonna go crazy because I have nothing like, well, might as well just burn myself out, who cares? But yeah, overall, it's been a pretty good season so far. I got 5 out of 7 shows I've won. So
pretty solid.
Competed 7 times, won 5 out of those 7. So I'm pretty happy with that so far. And we'll see what the rest of the season holds, but we're just getting started, you know?
Yeah, and the other 2 was a second and a third. So like it's you know, you've been close each time. So that's a solid year. So yeah, and I think we're learning show by show. You know, I think that we know that at 3 shows, we got to figure out something in 3 in a row. We got to manage the fullness a little bit better. I think that there's some more room there. In a couple of these shows, there's some more room there. We should be able to visually spot it a little bit better now. That's the benefit of doing so many shows, is you can learn each time and get a little bit better at it. So yeah, I think that the only thing I'm really seeing with these pictures is just the crispiness. I think comes down to the show. It's always 2. It looks like 2 or more shows each time is when you start getting less crispy, and then that's always. It's not because of conditioning. You're not getting softer within that time frame. So it has to be just a little bit of the fullness. So we just have to find that carb balance to get you fuller. Yeah.
Okay, everybody. So we actually recorded this 2021 recap, but then I competed at the Patriots Challenge. So I was like, okay, why not just add that into this video as well? But anyway, the Patriots Pro Challenge. This was a good show for me. I really, really liked my look here. I was very bubbly, very full, and things just came together on this day. I ended up winning with a perfect score. It's probably one of my favorite physiques this year. I think this is tied with my Pittsburgh Pro physique, but it's close. It's really close. I'm really happy about how things went at the show, and it was actually convenient because it was in my hometown of Las Vegas, Nevada, and yeah, great times, great memories. All right, well, I'm excited to see what's next. I thought it was helpful. Give a little summary of what we've been up to.
Yeah.
So,
well, that was fun.
what's your favorite look, Adam?
It's the Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh? Okay. Yeah. Unanimous decision. Pittsburgh Pro Show wins. Woo!
Pittsburgh, and then my favorite look ever this is pretty close to the Tahoe show last year.
Oh, yeah.
But that is probably my favorite look ever. And then one of my favorite looks on you, it was just cool to look like that for a day, was the Arnold of 19, where you were jacked there.
I was very full that show. I was bubbly AF.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And I see even from last year's photos, like improvements and stuff that I'm making. And it's really fun to be like improving each show, or trying to anyway. And, you know, it's all about the journey and learning each time.
That's a solid look right there.
That is. Everything came together that day.
Yeah.
That was like waistline was good, shoulders were good, glutes were good. That was a unique show because pre-judging started at like 7 p.m. So, you know, usually it starts in the morning.
Cool. Well, hopefully you guys learned a couple things from that and how you can manage your own preps and look back at your pictures and kind of identify issues and corrections and whatnot. But that's what we're doing today.
Yes.
So,
what was your favorite look of the season? Put it in the comment section below.
Anyway, thanks guys. Talk to you guys next time.